Confirmation Ministries back at you. This is Raven Shepherd coming to confirm you in God's love, coming to confess Jesus as Lord, coming to conform us to the image of God's mighty and all-powerful Son, Jesus. We finished verses 1 and 2 of Genesis chapter 1, though I don't feel that we were able to deal with those two verses the way we ought to and should have. Given the time limit, we have to move on. Genesis chapter 1 verse 3 begins the 6-day creation. So before we delve into that, I want to make some statements about the order that Moses has structured this in. We find in the 6 days of creation an announcement, and God said. We find in the 6 days of creation the command, let there be. We find in the 6 days of the creation the report, and so God made. We find in the 6 days of the creation God naming the cosmic elements. We also find in the creation, the 6-day creation, God evaluates his creation. God makes an announcement, and God said. This announcement shows us that God is a person who brings about purpose to his creation. Not only does he bring about purpose, the creation has a goal. God is bringing all of history, all of creation to its final end, to its goal, to its intended meaning. God brings about order in this 6 days of creation. God is the one who sovereignly creates by his pleasure. We noted on the last segment that God is not a part of creation. He is the one who sovereignly creates by his word. God speaks and creation exists. Creation is dependent upon God's word. It is bound by God's word. Not only do we see the announcement, we see the command, let there be. The cosmos comes into existence by God's will and his word. The power of God's words depends on himself. Just as a police officer, when he says freeze, the authority of his word rests in him being a police officer. In the same way, God's power and his word rests in himself, because he is the Lord of lords, the King of kings, the God of gods. He can speak and creation exists. Not only we find the command and the announcement, we find the report. And so God made. This shows God's transcendent authority. God is over all of creation. All of creation is subject to him. The scriptures say every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. Also, we find that God names his creation. The power to name demonstrates dominion. In the ancient Near Eastern culture, when one names another person, or that shows that the one that's naming has dominion or power over. We find God turning Abram's name into Abraham. We find God turning Jacob's name into Israel. So God shows his dominion, his authority over creation by naming it. And finally, we see in the 6 days of creation, God evaluating his work. He says it is good. Everything God creates functions as it intended in these 6 days. Darkness even becomes a part of what God has considered good, bringing the rhythm of life, making time and space, making the seasons, day and night. So we find in these 6 days an announcement, and God said. We find in these 6 days the command, let there be. We find in these 6 days the report, and so God made. We find in these 6 days God naming the elements. We find in these 6 days God evaluating. Confirmation Ministry screaming the Father.